We are live today. It is nighttime here in Israel. We are streaming live from Israel, kind of close to Haifa, between Tel Aviv and Haifa, near the beach. We're having a rainstorm, our first rain of the season. My name is Dr. Tovah Goldfine. This is TMS Roundtable, and I'll explain in a minute what TMS means. It means tension myoneural syndrome. It's a body-mind condition that happens from our mind and causes physical symptoms. Call it psychosomatic, call it what you want. The point is, every time we have a pain or a disease or something's wrong, there's an emotional component that we need to address. And when we do that, we heal faster and more efficiently. As many of you know, I've been a chiropractor for 36 years, and all that led to me to want to help people with chronic pain and disease, and most of all, to prevent it. And when they have it, to realize that there's a doctor within them. So tonight, I decided to get up in the middle of the night for a really good reason. First of all, I have a very good friend who we didn't go to high school, but we knew each other in high school, Gary Hendler. And Gary Hendler's always been in my heart, never romantically, but always a good friend and a good, solid citizen. And I didn't know a lot about his life because he was just this sort of Gary Hendler in the neighborhood. You know, I grew up in Havertown, so it was like Gary Hendler. So I didn't know about his life. But what happened was I understood through Facebook and media, you got to love that social media, that he was involved in something that was not so dissimilar than the work I'm doing, helping people with chronic pain or disease. And he's helping people with addiction. And it's not like he's a doctor or a social worker. He's just a guy who went through it and lives to tell about it and is now helping others. So I was really happy to ask my friend Gary to join me 2 a.m. in Israel time, 7 p.m. Philadelphia time, where I'm from. So we could spend some time talking about not only his story and how he helps others, but how even with chronic pain, you can get addicted. I mean, forget the opioids, forget that, but it can become an addiction, and healing happens just like what Gary's did. He healed himself from an addiction. You can heal yourself from chronic pain because it's really about a relationship with your body. And so, Gary Hendler, I'm so happy to see you live in my virtual studio from Ardmore, PA, to Caesarea, Israel. Virtual hug.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me into your world. And I find it because I'm technologically challenged. How am I looking at you? You're in Israel and I'm in Philadelphia. It's unbelievable.
It is. It is. It is this love. It is this, like, I always say I'm dependent. I don't like to be dependent on anything, but we are a bit dependent on the internet, and we got to thank that source. And it is an amazing technology. So really amazing to be connected here.
Yeah, it is amazing. And I really appreciate you bringing me on.
Yeah. So Gary, I didn't really know a lot about it. And then I did some research on clean and sober. And I don't think I could talk much about what you do, but I'd love to hear. I love a timeline, like a little bit, like not the elevator pitch, but a shorter story of, like, I want to know, like, you grew up, you had this happen, you were feeling like, because addiction comes from imbalance and emotional, struggle and conflict. And I want to tell you, I looked it up.
Yeah.
Do you know what addiction means? The word addiction is derived from a Latin term for enslaved or bound to. Isn't that fascinating? So tell us a little bit about your enslavement and how you freed yourself.
Well, I got to tell you, first of all, hindsight is 20/20, but I thought I had a wonderful childhood. Nothing was wrong, but there were signs. School, I cheated the whole way through. I got involved in the music business at age 14 in Philadelphia and did very, very well. Most of it was illegal. I was a thief.
You got away with murder.
Well, maybe.
Let's just see. So, but at that point, you were like thinking, this is life.
It was the life. I was driving a Rolls Royce when I was 20 years old, and I thought it would never end. I did educate myself. Obviously, I graduated from the same high school you did. I went to Temple University in Philadelphia, got a degree in journalism by the skin of my teeth. um, I cheated to get into law school.
Oh my God.
I got thrown out of 2 law schools because of my addiction. And that was in the very.
Wait, I wanted to stop for a minute because so at that time, you must have been feeling something, or were you just numbing out from the addiction?
Well, what happened was it was a vicious cycle. I saw people around me were getting jobs and moving along in their lives, and I wasn't going anywhere except I had money from the record business. And I kept feeling worse and worse and worse. I kept medicating myself with narcotics.
To feel good.
Feel better. But that doesn't last, because when that would wear off, I'm back in my own horrible reality. And I had multiple arrests for burglary, forgery of prescriptions.
So you probably felt like probably when you're on the drugs, what happens is you feel invincible. Like, let him hurt me. Like fearless almost.
Yeah, but I knew it was wrong. I knew I had enough awareness to know that I couldn't stop it, but I had enough awareness to know what was going around me, where my friends were moving on with their lives. And
what did that feel like? What did that feel like?
I felt horrible. One of my worst vivid memories is me being up all night, sitting in a chair, and the sun would come up and I would hear birds chirping and the buses moving and people are moving, going to work. And I'm sitting there. And it was very, very difficult.
So what'd you do with that heaviness?
I got high. Got high. Went to doctors all day long. Stole prescriptions.
Right.
Multiple arrests. My parents, I never went to them for money because I had plenty of money. Wow. In the end of the story is I had nothing. Nothing. Lost everything. And so
at what point, so this is 14, 15, 16, 17, 21 in the Rolls Royce. At what point did you start to think, because most people with addiction, they want to get better, but they don't have the we call it koach, like strength or even hope. Where did you get the hope?
Well, it was forced on me by the legal system. I was arrested for a burglary with a handgun, and there were multiple arrests. But that arrest, they wanted me to go to jail. And the lawyer said to me, listen, you go to rehab for your addiction, and when you get out, it'll look good. I had no intentions. I went into rehab. I was on welfare at that point. I went to rehab, and something clicked when I was in there. It was May.
What? Tell me what it was. Did someone speak to you? Was there some voice? Like, what was it?
I don't know. I have no idea. It was May of 1982. It was the last time I used, 40 years ago. I don't know what it was. They say a spiritual awakening. I'm not
a paradigm shift. A paradigm shift.
Something
okay, but go back there with me. What do you think it was? Was it the fear? Were you like think about it? Because
I was in this beautiful rehab, swimming pool, meals. It was just great. And there was a lot of therapy. And maybe I was just tired of that lifestyle.
Right.
And so when I got out in July of 82, there was no case because the arresting officer died while I was in rehab.
Well, that was kind of
but I got sober in 1982. In 1984, I was arrested for something I did in 1980.
Wow.
And I'm sober, and I was getting married, and it was a real.
Wow.
I'm glad I was clean and sober at that point to deal with it. but it was pretty scary. You think a lot of the addicts, because I've spoken to so many thousands of people, you think, oh, once you get sober, hey, the world should forgive you for everything you did. It
Right.
doesn't work like that.
No payback.
I was arrested, and I was getting married, and the family saw the articles were all over the newspapers because it was a big wreck, a big bust. And it was very embarrassing because I was sober for 2 years. But I got probation. Everybody else went to jail for quite some time. And then
Wow.
I was let go from probation early because they knew my life had changed in
Wow.
1982.
Wow.
And then
Come into the middle of the picture.
and then I got a job. I never really had a job. I worked for my uncle in the record company. I never really worked. I got a job in a clothing store in Philadelphia. That was
Wow.
pretty humbling from where I come from. It was
Wow.
wonderful. And then I
What was
got better.
wonderful? What was wonderful about it?
I didn't have to, it was just, there was nothing to hide, no tricks, no scams, no thefts. And I got several jobs in banks as loan officer, and I would always think to myself, do they know who I really am? And I got,
Well, just, I wanted to say we all have that dark side. It's
yes.
part of who you are, and it's like you can now thank that dark side for helping you understand who you are, and it's always with you. I mean,
It
you
always
need
was.
that to be who you are.
I've been sworn in by judges for state board positions, and every time I'm sworn in my head, I go, "Oh my God, do they know who I am really?" And I think I have friends who are very high positions, and everybody has this doubt and also this "I hope I don't get found out" syndrome.
Or that I'm human.
Yeah.
Like I think what without analyzing you too much, like your ego, like think about what the ego does. The ego we can propel ourselves forward with our ego and use it to serve us. We can use it to hurt us.
Oh,
So,
definitely.
you
Yes.
know,
Yes.
so tell me, Gary, the what and then as you started to live a normal life, quote unquote,
Yes.
what made you want to start to reach out to others and help them?
Well, when I got sober, I started sponsoring people, and then I got,
So you were in AA, which was
yes, and
really
I
amazing.
started the first AA meeting in a synagogue in the United States in
Where?
1985 at Mainline Reform.
No kidding.
Oh, yeah, and it went on for 40 years almost.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, we were the first ones, and it was great. A lot of support from the rabbis and the cantors, and so that was a great giving back. I really loved that, and a lot of people got sober going to that meeting and to other meetings. So that's really the first thing that I did to help people. And then I was approached by a disc jockey in Philadelphia about 10 years ago, and he said to me, "I know who you are from the record days. You used to run around the radio stations when you were a kid. And I heard about you. Would you like to have a radio show in Philadelphia about addiction and recovery?"
Wow.
And that
Wow.
started 10 years ago.
Wow.
And that is my passion.
That's amazing. And, so here it is, like you really, talk about taking lemon and making lemonades, or, breaking a vase and then making a mosaic picture out of it,
Yes. Yeah.
So, and it's a little bit like every week I see your guests and I think, how does he keep finding these people? I mean,
Well, at first it was a little difficult, but because the show is being syndicated, in a lot of cities, I have a lot of credibility now. So as you see, I get some famous entertainers, sports figures. I get politicians who come on, judges, district attorneys who are involved in the court systems,
yeah,
and I get those type of individuals. Last week, I had Josh Shapiro, who is running for governor of Pennsylvania. Hopefully tomorrow he will win. So
yeah.
I get all those people, and then it starts to snowball. And people know about Clean and Sober Radio.
Well, I want to ask. I want to interrupt, which I do. Like I do really well, but not. Excuse me for interrupting, but I want to make a point. What I'm fascinated by is all these people have. Because listen, we're human beings. We have an addictive nature. Question is what you do with it, how you balance it, how you control it. So here are these people that, have been through it. I mean, the people you have on your show have been through it and are in their healing journey.
Yes.
That's the prerequisite for being on your show.
That they are in recovery, unless they're politicians or judges. They're just, that's the other side of it. I want I talked to them about prison reform and sentencing guidelines and stuff like that. But when you see, I get a lot of my idols growing up, I have on my show now, and it's pretty cool, and so. And also I get to enjoy, because I grew up in the music business in Philly. I was a record promoter. I got records played on the radio that made hits.
Right.
I get to relive some of that
Right.
craziness, being healthy.
Right.
And so I get, so look, I always say, you get clean, that means you stop using. You get sober, which takes time to rewire your brain. And then the third thing is you give back. And that's the good stuff.
And it's healing. It's part of the, part of when we're really down, because I meet people that are really down with pain and disease. And when you channel that depression or that lack of hope into helping others, it chemically turns into your own belief and your own hope. Because when I forget that, of course, we all know when we exercise, we secrete endorphins, happy chemicals. But when I think an anxious thought, I actually create inflammation in my body. And when I help others, there's this belief. It's like a positive interaction, and the brain perceives that and calms down and starts to create different chemicals. We make cannabinoids in our brain. We make opioids. We make all these different chemicals. Cocaine. We make cocaine in our brain. We are a pharmacy. We don't need to take drugs. We're a pharmacy. So I think you got that. You figured that out. But in that way, the body. I was reading about addiction. The body wants pleasure. We all want pleasure. We're human. Come on, we're human. We're pleasure-seeking beings.
That's all we're looking for is pleasure.
Okay.
My parole officer, federal probation officer, labeled me as a hedonist back then, which was all I wanted, was seeking pleasure, nothing else.
Well, how did that feel to be called that?
I was just worried at that point.
Because you know what the Dalai Lama says? If you want to be happy, make others happy. So it's kind of like the same thing you're talking about, isn't it?
I guess. But it was a very long road. I mean, I used heavily from 1975 to 1982.
Unbelievable.
Work. I didn't do anything productive. Nothing. Just survived.
I mean,
with some of your old friends.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't know what I was doing. I was a bit naive back then, but anyway.
Well, you were like my sister, because the joke is sort of every time I was arrested, my sister was doing her homework. That's what went on.
I mean, really. And so I work with medical doctors. I work with different doctors in the health, the mind body field. And I work with something called neuroplasticity, we change the brain. We can actually make a new neurocircuit and a new pathway, because the pathway of your addiction and your wanting pleasure is there, but you're able to create a greater pathway that said, I can get what I need, and I'm happy with less. And guess what? I can be happy without a drink. I can be happy without a drug. I can create my own cocaine, my own cannabinoids. And that's what you did. Now, let's talk a little bit about the people that are not doing that and can't do it, because anything is possible. And I wanted to say this on the record. Ben Gurion, who, was, started the country here in 1948, he said, in order to be a realist, you have to believe in miracles. So, it's like a miracle is not some kind of thing like where you have to go to the mountain and get it from, we are our own doctors. We create all the things we need. A miracle is just a word. I mean, we can heal. It's not just possible, it's probable. I have 130 shows in English, Gary,
Yes.
and 90 broadcasts in Hebrew. People that have healed from multiple sclerosis, cancer, arthritis, people that just said, enough. I'm going to push through the pain. I'm going to push through the hedonistic feeling. And that's what you did. You went and said, this is not an enemy. This is not an attack. I'm creating my own war. And how can I create peace in my own brain? Because this was between you and you. Something was going on in here inside of your brain. And that's where the conflict was.
Well, you see, the structure of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, or Narcotics Anonymous, is there's a higher power and there's a God. And I would say 99% of people in recovery believe in that. And, I don't, but whatever works for somebody is fine. I don't know why I became an addict.
If I asked you, so let me ask you this.
Yeah.
You know why you became an addict. You wanted to feel good. You didn't want to deal with your feelings. You didn't want to face the truth.
Well, yeah, but I know a lot of people same situation, who didn't become addicts.
Okay.
It was a pre-existing condition, hereditary. There's a lot of theories. I don't think anybody knows the answer, because I have friends. I have identical friends, identical twins. One became a heroin addict and one's a professor at the University of Miami. How does that happen?
Yeah.
So environmental stuff, there's a lot of things. Who knows?
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, we're all affected by that. The question is, how do we deal with that challenge? How do we deal with that? It all comes into our life. But certain people, look, 5 people go into the water and 3 kids get sick and 2 don't. So 3, 2 were adapting and 3 weren't.
Well, do you deal with the 12-step?
Yes.
Okay.
And guess what? They have a Jewish, there's a rabbi that created a Jewish 12 steps, which is the same thing, because there's nothing new under the sun. Moses, Jesus, Allah, Buddha, it's nothing new we're talking about here. We're not creating anything new here. It's centuries old. Addiction, pleasure, the Greek mythology. I mean, the point is, you had resilience. I had resilience in my life to overcome a lot of adversity, and I'm still dragging a ball and chain a little bit, but the point is, I use the adversity to propel me forward. And that's the decision. So you made a decision, and the people that can't do that, I never give up hope. And obviously you're not either, because you're there educating. Every week you're educating people and saying, you can heal, you can do this. And that's what the AA philosophy is: either accept things or change things. And guess what? When you accept things, you can change it. So here's my answer. When you accepted that you were a drug addict and a loser, you were able to look at the monster in the mirror and say, hey, it's me. So you were able to do that, because that's basically what some people can't do. They can't deal with who they are. They want to be somebody else.
You're correct. I consider myself very lucky. And I have a lot of people.
I don't believe in luck. That to me I feel like you did some hard work.
I did work, but I did a lot of work.
Tell me about the AA. I want to know. So because I find AA fascinating. I find the I was involved with some codependent work with some people because, we talk about how bad it is for the family. We talk about when someone's in pain. I know, growing up with my mother who had MS, it was horrible for us, worse than even her. So that's the whole coda. It's fascinating. It's brilliant.
Yes.
But what the guy created in AA, it's not anything new that didn't come from Torah or the Bible or the Quran. It's the same reinventing of, how we help ourselves, how we self-heal. I call it the doctor within.
Well, and I'm in agreement with you. I mean, the first step in a 12-step program, you have to come to the conclusion you got a problem. That's the first thing. And you want to change. And then there's all these other steps. But you know what? You never know. Look, when I went into rehab, I didn't go in there to get clean. I got there to look good in a courtroom.
Wow.
But stuff happens. I don't know what happens.
Come on. What happened? Like something changed deep inside and you made a decision.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know.
So I don't call that luck. Like, there was, like you said, you were tired. So that's a surrender because you were fighting. You were fighting an addiction. You were fighting a pleasure-seeking part of our animalistic self, which again is human. You were fighting, and you were like, because that's part of when we heal chronic pain. It's an acceptance.
I didn't know how to get out of it, Tara. I didn't know how to stop it. I wanted to stop. I wanted to stop it, but I didn't know how.
Wow.
It sounds stupid, doesn't it?
No, but you also you gave up to a higher power, which was the people in the rehab. You said, "Okay, I'm going to open up to you," but there was part of you that surrendered, and even if you don't know exactly what it was, it happened in your unconscious. Your unconscious made the decision.
I'm sure you're right. Sure you're right.
So what else? I want to talk a little bit more because when it comes to chronic pain and people who have autoimmune disease, when people have autoimmune disease, the body's attacking itself.
I have it.
And the body is getting a message from the unconscious, and the brain is on fight or flight all the time in survival mode, and the autoimmune system, the immune system takes messages, and the hormonal balance changes, and people get sick. And the question is, why is the body? What's the messages the body's getting? So it's the same thing with autoimmune. That when people can be in touch with what's happening in their unconscious. So you got lucky, quote unquote, and you let your surrender and your fatigue work for you.
Agreed.
So in AA, again, you were going and doing your time because you wanted to get free, or you kind of started to understand what the AA people were saying?
Well, it was a community. People in AA, nobody wanted anything from anybody. Nobody was knocking on my door, call me, you have this. It's just people trying to stay clean. And it was nice. I met a lot of people from my past I would see coming into meetings. That was fun. And it became social for me. I went to meetings very heavily for 35 years.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's also a confrontation of like every time you walk in there, it's like you could think I'm broken, or you could think I'm healing.
Yeah, that's right. And and you're not alone. And your issues are not your own. Other people have those issues. So it's there's so many groups like that.
Right.
So you feel like you're part of sort of a healthy community for once.
Right.
Doing like normal stuff. I never did normal things. Like after me to go out to eat. Obviously, there's no drinks or anything. And it's just like normal people. I didn't know what that was like.
Uh-huh. And how do you feel about around a glass of wine? You won't drink it? You're not interested?
What, drinking?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't. I'm an addict. I don't touch anything.
Wow.
Nothing. Anybody that does, they're not clean.
So once you're an addict, you can't. So physiologically, if you can't drink, because then it will change parts of your brain.
Just look. I don't care if it was heroin, whatever it was. We're just looking for a feeling, whether it comes from
Right.
booze, pills, doesn't matter. And a lot of people trick themselves. They're clean, but they got, they're still taking Percodan, So you know what? I don't care. Let them fool themselves.
Right.
It doesn't
Right.
bother me.
So what do you get phone calls from people? Are you literally like are you a counselor? Are you a
I'm not a counselor, but I do get calls from synagogue. There's a member of the synagogue. I get people ask me to speak all over.
wow.
Uh,
Wow.
and then
Amazing.
I'm an advisor to the governor of Pennsylvania for the Department of Drugs and Alcohol.
So what does that entail?
Policy making, opinions.
You got to know all those political words.
I know all the
We're
politics.
not going to talk about politics tonight.
But I know all of the politicians, and they know me, and
Amazing.
the judges. So it's almost funny for me because it's like I had a 40th anniversary in May, and the judges came, the district attorneys came, and I said to them, you know what? 41 years ago, none of you would have had anything to do with me. It's pretty funny.
I mean, look, and everyone can have, I'm going to put this broadcast on my YouTube.
Yeah.
Because everybody, like there are people who are being like, I can't do like Gary, you're not anybody special.
I'm not.
I mean, you went ahead and you took different risk. And you said like your intention was that you just wanted to get out of the place, or you just wanted to, put on a good show. But so it's like we all have addictive natures. So now you have now you want to be good, you want to be well, you want to help others. From my childhood, which was a bit traumatic and dramatic, I got into wanting to help others. And is it an addiction? It's just I get a lot of pleasure from it.
Yeah.
It's
absolutely. Is it selfish? AA is a selfish program. When I do all this stuff for people, I'm getting a benefit out of it. Right. So is it selfish? I don't know. Right.
Well, I want to say something about the word anxiety because, anxiety is not a bad thing. We cross the street on a red light because we have an anxious feeling. We're in the car. We're very aware because we're mindful. So anxiety is actually not a bad thing. It's part of our brain. It's part of our awareness. And so when that becomes unbalanced, that's when we start to want to stuff our feelings because we don't want to feel anxious. But anxiety is not a bad thing. And so again, my work is also about part of the TMS, which was created by this Dr. John Sarno, who was a New York physician, understood that back pain doesn't always mean a disc problem, and people who have disc problems doesn't mean it has to be chronic. So it's another show, but the point is people are stuffing their feelings and not dealing with their anxiety, and then the brain perceives stress like a lion is coming, and all it is Gary's dealer's coming.
And maybe you're saying this, I'm not sure. And people use that for an excuse to get high.
Exactly.
Oh, my back, and we're so used to, addicts are so used to, taking pills, taking whatever to get out of it.
Exactly.
But the question is, I guess for me, why me?
Right.
Is it I had access to a lot of money. I had access to a very flamboyant lifestyle. I don't know. I didn't come from that. Nobody in my family has a disease of addiction. So
it was like the money. Look, that whole thing. I don't think you really knew what to do with that. So you did what your brain said. It was more and more and more. More is better.
More is better. More is better. But I knew also what was going on around me with friends of mine that were moving on. That was terrifying. I was 29 when I got clean.
You must have felt so rejected.
I felt, and that, of course, then I gravitated to the worst of the worst in society to make myself feel okay. But I knew I wasn't okay.
Good point there. That's a good point. I'll be around people lower than me so I can feel higher. And that's abusive. It's abusive to yourself.
But it's a trick. It's a trick in your head. It's so stupid. But I'm not. An addict's doesn't think clearly. Their brains are not wired properly.
Right.
And also, I come from a family where many of them were doctors, psychiatrists, and if I went to a family affair, they would come up to me and very condescending. Oh, how's Gary doing these days? That made me real. I still could feel what that felt like.
Yeah.
How horrible.
So would you say that now you're obviously probably more in touch with your feelings? I mean, you're more aware of when you feel rejected. You're more aware when you feel anxious. You're more.
Yeah, I know. I'm very aware of everything.
So do you have one thing that helps people with pain and disease, and I think with addiction, is to look at the addictive part of that life as a gift.
Why?
Because it helps you grow up.
Well, for the lucky people, it does. The other people are dead.
Right.
I have a lot of friends that are dead. Why them? Why not me? Why?
Why? Well, what do you think? They made a choice. They're not a victim. We're not a victim of drugs. We're not a victim of pain. We're not a victim of disease. See, and look, society and the medical system, treats symptoms. We talked about that, on our pregame show. We were talking about, we want to get to the cause. And AA is getting to the cause. It's like you go in there and you're naked with your clothes on.
How can they make a choice though when they don't think clearly?
Somebody, it's like, this is the way I look at it. You took yourself to the place, you can take yourself out. You were well. Like I say to somebody, your body was well, and then it got sick. Your body knows what wellness is. You took yourself there by stuffing your feelings and not wanting to feel reality, and you could take yourself back. It's not easy, but there's support.
You're right. I know a lot of people got clean in prison, believe it or not. But
I think some of the prison rehabs are amazing. Some of the stuff they're doing in prison is amazing. But we could sit back and say, why the need for a prison? Like the world we live in, is in balance. We're not getting great messages from our media. I mean, let's not go there. We're not going to go there. But we have to make decisions in spite of that. We have to have a knowledge of ourself, a sense of ourself. And sometimes what I call, when we know something is wrong, it's like what I'm trying to say is sometimes we have to go into the resistance. We have to go to the place we don't want to go. If we know it's wrong, then go there. If we know it's dark, we know it's scary, then go there, because that's where the lesson is. That's where the magic is.
Well, you know what? I'm not sure. I mean, it's almost like saying, I hate to use this word, retarded, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Can you ask a retarded, I don't like using that word, somebody with that kind of disability to make correct choices? No.
That's different. That's a chemical imbalance from birth. It's not a
chemical imbalance.
Say this again.
Addiction, they say, is a chemical.
Of course it is.
Yeah,
I'm reading about the brain changes. The brain becomes it needs something because you've given it that pathway that it's like, look, the man with the phantom leg gets his leg cut off. He's still feeling pain. He's being taught that the pain is here. So the need is here, but you can change that with a greater need. I need something healthy. So.
And hopefully people come to that conclusion. You just said something that made me think, when I first started taking my drug of choice, the first time, I think it opened up a pathway, like you just said, in my brain that I just had to start feeding it. Boom. I didn't.
Of course, because you didn't want to feel, you wanted pleasure. You saw that you could get it.
Yeah.
You really didn't stop to think about the consequences.
No, not at all.
Right.
No, but we talk about in recovery, there's a thing called euphoric recall. It's like I can start saying, yeah, I had this, we did this, but you have to play the tape till the end to see what really happened. It's not fun. After, it was all fun for a while, and then it was just maintaining your insanity.
Right.
Really, really, a lot of my friends, and it didn't happen to them. It did not happen to them.
Is it possible that see, I kind of, I learn a lot about childhood trauma and things that happen. Could even be in utero, could be past lives, which we're not going to go there. Yeah. But we grow up with we already have a certain way of nature that we are, and then we get nurtured by a family. And look, I'm a grandmother, I'm a parent. I don't blame my parents, and my kids don't blame me. I'm responsible for my shit. And my parents weren't in touch enough to be responsible for their shit, but it's like we have to accept. It's like there's an acceptance, and that's what the AA is. It's an acceptance of reality is not easy. Life is not easy. We're on this earth. This is why, I like a little bit, I was into spiritual stuff in high school, and I'm very balanced. I'm not like super religious, but I believe in a higher source because, something like, even if we all came from monkeys, somebody made the first monkey. So I'm a big believer in both things. But the point you're going to say something.
I agree with you.
Yeah. So the point I'm making is that we have to accept our reality. We're on this earth. A lot of us didn't choose to be here. Okay, and some of us choose to leave out to split early. So it is a huge responsibility to be alive. And it's a heavy load.
Nancy Reagan said regarding drugs, just say no, which is beyond absurd. That was like the dumbest thing. You can't. It's
like saying beat cancer. We don't beat something.
Right.
We have to accept it.
Yeah. It's like saying, all right, don't drink any water anymore. No more liquids anymore. It's just ridiculous. Whatever gets you into recovery, whatever forces you, whether it's the police, whether it's your your wife's going to leave you, whatever it is to shake you into, I better do something about this.
Yeah.
Is okay.
Yeah.
But as you said, there's plenty of people who never get it.
Right.
But there's plenty of people who do. There are 25 million people in the United States that are in recovery. I always say we could steer any election. We can make anything happen. 25 million people in recovery. So those 25 million affect another 100 million families. But it's
unbelievable.
It is.
That's the story of hope. That's the biology of hope and the biology of belief. Because when my first book that I read, I think I was at the JCC in Wynwood, and a doctor gave me a book called Anatomy of an Illness. And it's about a guy named Norman Cousins who he got some kind of autoimmune disease. And then he watched Three Stooges movies and injected himself with vitamin C, and his immune system changed.
Wait, he watched Three Stooges movies?
He did to laugh.
Okay, to laugh, yeah.
To create endorphins. I mean, like he was brilliant. He wasn't a doctor. He was the editor of the Saturday Night Post or something like that, or the New Yorker magazine.
Yeah.
Norman Cousins, amazing guy. In fact, but he did a lot of interview with doctors because when he got better, he started because he also had a doctor because he wanted to get out of the hospital and go into a hotel room because he was like, this is a stressful place. I mean, hospitals are stressful places.
Yeah.
So he met a lot of doctors. Basically, when the doctor says to you, there's nothing we can do, what do? You go home and die. How about if we say, I don't know if there's a solution here in one of my books, but the human body is pretty resilient. And I think if you did some things that helped your immune system and helped your your psychological mind, you're going to feel better, and that will help you. Like and I'm talking to these doctors now that are doing this mind body work and saying to you, there's hope and there's belief, and that, doctors are not God. And so we have to put them into perspective. And thank God, I had 2 babies. I got a big needle in my back. I'm not into pain. I have a headache. I take an Advil. I also want to know where the headache's coming from. So I'm not against pain. We're also talking about, making a decision for yourself, knowing yourself. I think, Gary, what happened with your rehab is you got to know yourself, and you were like, I don't think this guy's so bad. Because you didn't know yourself before. You were shutting yourself off from the world.
Sounds reasonable. But, you brought up pain, very important. So many people have become addicted to opioids from little pain, whether and it's the doctors play into it too. They've ruined so many people. And the pharmaceutical companies.
Well, let's not talk about big pharma, because it is. Talk about an addiction. Listen, we're in a world going so fast, Gar, that we got to just put the brake on our own personal lives and step back and be objective and make your own decisions. And this is a big responsibility, and some people don't want to deal with it.
I want to ask you something. You mentioned the JCC. Can we talk about that for a minute?
Please.
Remember who the director was?
Farrell?
Marty Schneer. Is that right?
Yeah. I
was on the board there.
Are you kidding me? That's when I had my office there.
Wait, I want to tell you something.
I'm in Florida now. You're on the board?
I was on the board of JCC's in Wynwood. I didn't know that each board member had to conduct a service at some point. I quit.
A service.
Huh? A service. Like read from whatever. Blah, blah, blah. I quit because I didn't know anything like that.
So interesting.
I quit.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you don't like talking about religion. You don't like, there's a part of that look, but yourself. You know what's uncomfortable. If you had to go there for your daughter or something, God forbid, you'd go there. But you know yourself, and that's when I say if people can take their addiction and channel it to work for them.
Yeah, no matter what. Look, I don't look. I'm saying this personally. I don't believe in religion, but geez, if religion works for you and it helps you in all facets of your life, by all means, it should be part of your life.
That's the original purpose of religion. It was to know yourself. It was to do good. It was to, like the 10 Commandments. I mean, we're talking basic good human being. And look, you never hurt anybody. The only person you hurt was yourself.
Well, that's debatable.
Anyway.
We're not around to talk about it, but
listen, I want to leave the show.
What do we have to leave now? What time is this?
Soon. We're going to leave soon because I'm going to go back to bed, and then I get up, sleep for 5 hours, and then do yoga, because instead of being addicted to pain or uncomfortable, I do a lot of exercise because it helps my anxiety. I'm not extreme, I'm not a marathon runner, but you see, marathon runners and sports people, they all have this wave of drive. I want the adrenaline, and we have to be aware of that. I know that when I feel sad or I feel tired, I feel lonely, I want to do something that supports me, that serves me. And so, but I'm aware that maybe it's because I'm alone. So I'm looking at myself a lot, not obsessive, but understanding, Terry, that I come from a place where look, I think I happen to think if we analyzed the people, because we analyze, there's studies in chronic pain work about the kind of personality of people that will be in chronic pain and the kind of personality that will be addicted. And so we're sensitive people, sensitive, strong people.
Yes.
Imagine you see that.
I totally agree with you. I mean, the people that I know that are in recovery, they're good workers. They're aware. They're not we're not 100% anything. But
they're perfectionists. I think we're perfectionists.
We are compassionate. We care.
Wow.
Not all the time, but there's such stigma still against even people in recovery, not even people in active addiction.
Wow.
And that's going to take a long, long time.
Wow.
You know,
Gary, you really come a long way. I mean, like you've come a long way, even from when, I was working on you and working on your spine or whatever. You came to my office to do, but I'm saying to you, come a long way. You've calmed down. You have a lot of knowledge. You used to joke a lot and make jokes. And now you're just a little bit more, I think you're more rooted, like a tree, like a willow tree.
I am, but I still like to have fun. I can tell you that. And how about you?
There's nothing wrong with having fun. It's all about balance.
Responsible fun.
Right. So listen, I want to leave the audience with a couple of insights. I'd like to call them take home Terry tools.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm working with people in chronic pain who are addicted to wanting to get better. And the fact is, if you're addicted to wanting to get better, you'll push it away. If I'm addicted, if I want something, if I want to sleep, I'll push it away. It's a brain language. You have to be, I want to create an opportunity to not be in pain. I want to have the calm in my brain and the health of my body to be able to have this pain. So it's a language. And so I want you to speak the language of, the brain and how someone can you would do it in your words. If somebody was addicted to alcohol or drugs or opioids or their pain because of their fear, because they're not wanting to deal with who they are, they're human. We're not judging here. We're here to say we've all been through it. I've been through my own drama and trauma, Gary. We don't need to talk about that live here, and I came out, and I'm, it's like no one is not dealing with something.
Totally correct.
What do you want to say to the listeners of just some hope, some belief, some words, some pearls of wisdom?
Well, I would say that, it's not, there is plenty of hope. There's plenty of treatment. The only time you're not eligible is when you're dead. So as long as you're alive, there are many, many options. And for the addict or alcoholic, don't bring up money because you can go to meetings. They're free.
Good point.
Look, I'm one of 25 million people who really, nobody would have ever believed that I would get clean and sober. So people, there's so much, give it a shot. Go, if you're an addict, go to a meeting, call a therapist, try different things. And you might be surprised that you can live a really great life.
Right. There's always a second chance, a third chance, a fourth chance, a fifth chance.
Yes, agreed.
Well, you have blessed my virtual studio with amazing pixie dust, and we really probably could talk all night.
We can do this again.
Yeah, we will do it again. So in the meantime, I just want to say to the listeners, this will be on my YouTube channel called TMS Roundtable Global. And Gary is on Facebook. You can contact him if you ever need any kind of, he's a conduit. He's a vehicle for change, for help. And he's available, and I'm available to help you reach Gary. And I'm available for anyone in having some chronic pain issues or autoimmune disease, because there is a doctor and psychologist in you. There is an AA counselor in you, because we got sick and we can get better. And I am blindly leading this voice of not everything is possible. Everything is possible. And there's no cure. God cures. The doctors don't cure.
Can I give a plug to my radio show?
Please.
If you go on, first of all, if you go Google Clean and Sober Broadcasting.
I was advertising it all over my Facebook.
You'll find everything. And if you want to watch the shows, you go on Facebook to Clean and Sober Radio. And if you're not watching me live, Fridays at 3 Eastern Standard Time, United States, all our shows are on there. We're podcasted, but we're a resource to help people get into treatment also. Amazing. cleanandsoberbroadcasting.com.
I love it. Yeah, it's a beautiful picture. I looked at the website. I was advertising it all over. I have a couple thousand subscribers to my Facebook page and 2,000 on my YouTube. So we are going live for a long time.
Look at us from Havertown, Pennsylvania.
Windsor Park Lane. You know how we grew up? I grew up in Overbrook Park. I was born on Marybrook Road. My first job was at Greenberg's Bakery. And I have to come clean with something. My folks moved to Havertown. I worked in the bakery as a first job. I would drive like my dad's old, I forget the kind of car it was.
Yeah.
And I would go work in early Sunday morning. And during Passover, people would come in and say, well, is this for Passover? And in the back of the bakery, they never changed anything. They didn't change the pans. They didn't change. And I'm thinking, I'm lying. I remember that. I was like, I don't like this feeling. And I thought, it was like when I went to see the movie Serpico, I was like, oh, the cops? What? The cops like take drugs? They take the drugs from the people and they use them? I'm like, oh my God, like I couldn't believe.
You were so naive. My first job was at Barson's on Hartford Avenue.
Oh my God. Okay.
I stole tips off the tables.
Unbelievable. He was my neighbor, Sam Barson.
Yeah.
Sam.
Yeah.
He lived in Windsor Park Lane. Anyway, enough about us.
All right, listen, thank you so very much. I think you're doing such incredible things.
Thank you.
And you're a very special person to me.
Wow. Hey, Gar, I'm really happy we connected. We'll meet again.
Definitely will.
God bless.
God bless you. Bye, Tara.
Bye.
Bye.
Don't go yet. Don't go.